Konnichiwa, Mihoko desu. How are you today? When meeting someone for the first time, I think the impression of a cheerful person or a gloomy person is mainly based on the person's facial expressions. In a sense, the face is like a mirror that reflects the mind. If a person is living a happy life, it will show on the face. And if they are living dissatisfied lives, their face will become gloomy. Many people want to have cheerful looks on their faces because more people will come to those who look happy and the fun will spread further from there. To give a brighter impression, have you ever wondered how you can change your facial expressions? I believe there are two main factors that make gloomy facial looks. One factor is the way of thinking. If a person lacks self-confidence and always sees things in negative ways, his or her face will become dark. The other factor is when a person has been placed in a difficult environment for a long time. This factor is often the case regardless of one's intention, so it may need more effort and patience to keep one's face from darkening. I'm an optimistic person by nature and rarely think pessimistically about the things. But I like to share two of my personal experiences that made my face gloomy due to my unexpected situations. The first was during the 10 years between my teens and early 20s. This was the darkest period of my life I don't want to remember in terms of my mind and facial expressions. This was triggered by the death of my father when I was 12 years old. My father had been so healthy that I had never seen him sick in bed. However, one morning he left for work in good shape as usual and came home at night in a dead body. He suddenly died of a heart attack. The experience of my beloved family disappearing all of a sudden left me with a great trauma. In addition to that, my father was a good mentor who had talked to me about Japanese classical literature, various other cultures, and even corrected my essays for my school homework. After my father's sudden death, my mother began to teach flower arrangement also outside of home. Even though I knew it was a necessary part of life, I missed her when I came home from school. My mother was devoted herself to flower arrangement, and she had almost no interest in anything else, including my school life. She was completely indifferent to my school scores. My father had always given me advice, but he was no longer around. I had to make decisions on my own about high school and college I should go. In my early 20s, I traveled in European countries by myself for 1 year. It really changed my facial look. In spite of a poor trip, as I spent my days discovering new and exciting things, I became so active and cheerful. When I returned home, people were very surprised to see I had changed so much, like a different person. My face was full of happiness. My second hard experience was taking care of my mother alone at home for 5 years. As I had a sibling, I didn't expect to be the single caregiver for my mother, but when I realized I would be, I went to see my friend for getting some advice. At that time, my friend had been caring for her mother for many years. I hadn't seen her for several years. When she opened the front door, I was surprised to see her face because she looked very lonely and sad. I quickly realized that home care might change my facial look a lot. I thought I should do something to prevent it and prepared my mind. Actually, the days of caring for my mother greatly changed my life. It made me difficult to continue my work I had established. The time for myself was extremely reduced. As my mother was suffering from dementia, I spent a few hours daily to keep listening to her repeated complaints. When I found myself in such a difficult environment, I began to practice two things every morning. One thing was to face the mirror and say to myself, smiling, "Don't worry, everything will be fine." There's a words to encourage myself. The other thing was to put my face deep in flowers or plants in the garden and pray while smelling the scent. May I be kind to my mother today. They are just the ideas I came up with, but I think they are quite effective. When I forced myself to smile and say, "I can do it," I felt a little more cheerful at that time. Taking a deep breath and smelling the plants calmed me down. Around the second year of caring for my mother, I started learning tea ceremony with the time when the visiting professional caregivers were nursing my mother. By spending time for my own away from my mother, I was able to relax and be nicer to her. These changes in me also gave a good effect on my mother. Her facial expressions became softer and happier. I learned a very important lesson from nursing care that in order to make my loved ones happy, I have to be happy myself. Besides, through the days when my time was extremely limited, I became a person who could appreciate happiness even in the smallest things, such as reading a book for 30 minutes, finding a beautiful flower, and so on. My mother passed away and my caring life was already finished. But still now, it's my routine to look in the mirror every morning and smile and say to myself, "I can do it." I know my facial expressions reflect my inner feelings, so I often take a selfie with my smartphone to make sure if my face looks happy. I believe a happy face leads to a life of taking care of oneself. That's all for now. See you again. ごきげんよう. Have a beautiful day.